Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today we're doing a box office breakdown for this past weekend, which has seen Spider-Man No Way Home once again at number 1 at the box office, taking the spot of Scream 5, which was there for one sole week. But the strength and power of Spider-Man No Way Home continues to dominate the box office, even though the box office media continue to try and spin all the kinds of narratives around the film and just the film-going experience in general. And sometimes they're doing it towards the positive, sometimes towards the negative, but it's really starting to grind my gears about how they keep on talking about how this film is at the number 5 or number 6 or number 7 spot worldwide all-time global box office, when failing to recognize and failing to mention that these are all numbers before you adjust for inflation, which would put the film into a very different category altogether. Not to say that the film is not doing incredibly well, and it's not to say the film is not impressive. As you all know, I've talked about this film a lot on this channel, as it has been really the peak of box office news over the last several years, as it has just completely dominated any and all of the narratives that have been used by the fear-mongering media. But the film is back in its rightful number 1 spot, and probably will stay in the number 1 spot, I would say, over the next week or two, until we finally start to get some wider releases set to come out towards the beginning of February, where, of course, we'll follow that all the time as we cover major box office news for this channel. Before going any further into this bit of news, which also saw us able to make some predictions on what we are going to see from Scream 5 as far as the likely and number for the film, and also the potential how much potential profit we're going to see from the film, please make sure that you smash that like button, that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that bell notification turned on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So as you can see here from Deadline, which of course is a left-leaning source, as it likes to always remind us over with the Ground News tab, it says Spider-Man No Way Home zips to number 6 on the all-time global box office chart. When unadjusted is what that should say if it was going to actually be honest, with $1.69 billion. And so this is definitely somewhere where I was definitely wrong in one of my predictions. I thought that the film was going to be able to get into the $1.7 billion territory, and had a very good chance of getting closer to the $1.75 billion territory that many people, including myself, have predicted would be a minimum for this film. However, based on the fact that it is slowing down, not just here domestically, where it has actually held on a lot more and held on a lot stronger, but especially internationally, where it has started to really slow down quite a bit, it seems very likely that the film will not get anywhere close to the $2 billion mark that I said was at least a possibility. However, the film's still very much on the way, and very much pacing towards the $1.75 billion that even industry experts were saying the film would likely hit. Seems like it is going in that territory. Seems like, especially with very little competition over the next couple weeks from no real other major releases set to come out. Scream 5 was really its biggest competition until the very beginning of February, where we see films like Jackass Forever, of all films, likely to take the number 1 spot when that comes out. It looks like it'll be some smooth sailing at the very least for the upcoming weeks of Spider-Man No Way Home. Looking at the actual weekend box office, as you can see, Spider-Man No Way Home indeed back at number 1 with $14.1 million domestically, a 30% drop, so yet another very strong drop for the film. Scream 5 dropping to the number 2 slot with a 59% drop, so not a terrible drop from a week 1 to week 2 margin, making $12.4 million with a domestic total of around $51.3 million. So as I said, Scream 5 is definitely doing well enough to actually, as of this weekend, break even. The film needed to make $60 million worldwide to break even, and it has indeed done so. So that anything it's making from this point going forward is net gain, net profit. Sing 2 still very much in the discussion, even after 5 weeks of release, making another $5.7 million, only a 28% drop. Actually, a stronger drop there, percentage-wise, when you compare that to Spider-Man No Way Home, with a total domestic going now up to $128.4 million. So, yeah, Sing 2, a film from Universal. I don't think a lot of people expect it to be doing as well, but hey, it goes to show you that if you make an animated film and you don't spend an arm and a leg on that animated film, like in the case of Disney Encanto, you can expect to make some money back. Redeeming Love, the brand new release from Universal, though it definitely seems like it may have been a combination of Universal or Pure Flix, or at least that's how it came across, at least to me, did not come out in a lot lot of theaters, only about 1,900, still made $3.7 million, which is actually not a terrible, total to theater ratio per theater ratio, right? $1,950 per theater versus the fifth week of releasings to's $1,600, but a lot better than so many of the other films that are on this list right here. The Kingsman came in once again at the number 5 slot, so 20% drop, but because it had still such a small opening weekend, even these strong holdovers for films like this really don't mean a whole lot. 31 million now in the total domestic charting. We have, of course, 355, which continues to be a massive bomb, and again, always great to see films that go woke and indeed go broke. American Underdog, can't really say much about it. Still don't have any budget for this film. Goodness gracious, just tell us what the budget was, how much this film actually cost, so that way I can actually crunch some numbers on whether or not this film was a financial success or not. What we can say is not likely to be a financial success is actually a film that was made back in 2014. So originally, I actually had some people in the comment section on one of my previous videos point out King's Daughter was actually filmed and produced back in 2014 and has been basically delayed in its release because no one was really looking to pick it up. It had a release date. They decided to change it for some various reasons, and all of a sudden it got shopped around a bit, and it was finally released just this past weekend. And so what's interesting about this film is not only did it make nothing, it made $750,000 in over 2,000 screens, but also because of its $40 million budget, and because that budget was spent back in 2014, it means that we have to adjust that for inflation, meaning the film actually costs around $47 million or so, and it is just not good news for that film, and is basically guaranteed to be a massive flop, as if no one's going to see it this weekend, very doubtful anyone's going to go see it as of next weekend either. West Side Story in a similar situation, only not nearly as bad. Still out for awards contention, still out at over 1,000 screens, in fact, after 7 weeks of release, even though no one is going to see it. So it seems like Disney is just basically keeping this out in as many theaters as possible, trying to get as many people to go see it, specifically people who are in the voting block, hoping that they can get some nominations and eventually some wins at the Oscars and some of the other award shows. Is really the only justification they have for this film, because it's not making its money back and there's just no chance for it. Ghostbusters Afterlife continues to be in the conversation, though. $625,000, still, again, not out in too many theaters, but with $127.0 million domestically after 10 weeks of release. Anything it makes from this point forward has been net gain, net profit. Going to individual releases now, as you can see for Scream, the film is now up to $69.2 million. So as I said, it is now past the point of profitability. As we have talked about beforehand, there's a more complicated way to figure out what a film needs to break even. But the simpler one is if you take the production budget, multiply it by 2.5, that is what the film needs to make in order to break even. So as you can see, $24 million production budget times 2.5 would be roughly around $60 million. This film is now at 2.9 times worldwide its production budget, making this film into the profitability territory. Spider-Man No Way Home at $1.6 billion, so it'll reach 1.7 by the end of next weekend, but definitely further behind than I originally had thought. I also had thought it could reach $1 billion internationally. Obviously, that did not happen. That was where I was wrong in this instance, but the film is indeed still doing well enough to probably be able to reach that 1.75 billion within the next couple weeks or so. Redeeming Love, as I mentioned, haven't heard a whole lot about this film. Looking into its summary, I had mentioned Universal as one of the as the distributor of this film. I thought that for sure it would have had to have been some type of PureFlix interaction here. It looks like that is at least not according to what's going on here. Production method, production company. There it is. Yes, PureFlix. There it is. It is indeed. It was co-financed by PureFlix as well as other distributors, but put out by Universal. So probably cost next to nothing to make. It'll be interesting to see how much money it actually costs when a production budget is available. King's Daughter, as I mentioned before, cost over $47 million. Not looking very good for that. 355. This says 13, but according to the numbers that are a little bit more up to date, it's actually at $15 million. Not that makes a whole lot of a difference. Still $15 million on a $75 million budget, just to give you an idea of how far off and how just not close and how impossible it would be for the film to break even. It's at 0.2 times its production budget. 2.5 times the production budget is the break even, and it's at 0.2. Go woke, go broke. Sing 2, though, still doing incredibly well, $241 million now worldwide. Kingsman, even though it's made over $100 million now, good for you, still not making enough to break even or come close to breaking even. Same with Matrix Resurrections. This film is still making a little bit of money, though it's making money in one of the worst places possible because, yes, you're right, Matrix Resurrections did come out in China, where it has made over $10 million there so far. Again, sometimes these numbers are not fully up to date, and so I imagine it's probably maybe even a little bit more in China at this point. But what's really sad is that since we know 25% of this money goes to the studio and the 75% goes to the Chinese Communist Party, we can say for a fact that this one movie gave $7.5 million to the CCP. And Lord knows they're going to be using that money only for the most noblest of reasons, of course. Of course, right? So freaking ridiculous. Anyway, Spider-Man No Way Home, of course, the talk is, will it be able to take down Avatar in its total? Because if you look at this film compared to Avatar at the same time of its release, if you just look at the raw numbers, it seems to indicate that they are very close together. The issue, as I've mentioned previously, is that that's when you do not adjust the numbers for inflation, and that is an incredibly important thing that you got to do. In fact, let me go ahead and try and see if we can try and do this live, if we possibly can. As you all know, I like to do things live. It makes things just a little bit more fun at times. So let's go ahead and let's have the actuals. Let's have the actual numbers that were being reported to try and see exactly what they're trying to get at here. So, as you can see, when you compare Spider-Man No Way Home on one side, Avatar on the other side, what they are trying to say is, hey, look at this, man. This film has made $721 million. It is already outpacing that of Avatar at the same time of its release. Oh boy. Could it be that the film is going to be able to make more than Avatar, even though technically you look at it and you can already say that it has? Here is, of course, the biggest issue when you look at it even domestically or internationally. When you adjust that number for inflation, everything turns around quite a bit. As you can see, $721 million versus $673 million. This film's end result, when adjusted for inflation, this is Avatar, was $846 million. There's no chance in hell that this film, as good as it is going to make the same amount of money. As I'd mentioned previously, Avatar was truly a beast in a wide variety of ways, and one of the biggest reasons why the film was as successful as it was is because of the premium ticket prices. This movie was available pretty much exclusively in premium formatting, or at the very least, a lot of the key showtimes were given to the premium releases, so the 3D, the IMAX 3D, etc. It was left out in theaters for an extended period of time, and so it makes sense that this film made as much money as it did. Not to mention, it was an experience, and many people bought into the experience. However, even though, of course, the film really didn't live up to any hype, and it really just came down to being more of a gimmick than anything else, one can still look at these numbers and realize that even though this movie had, again, right now, Spider-Man No Way Home is ahead of where the movie was in the same point of its release. When you adjust these numbers for inflation, you realize that that $846 million versus the $721, when this is, again, clearly on the decline, even though there's no competition, there's just no way that the film is going to be able to match up to that number. It's very important for us to always keep those things in mind. Looking at some of the box office tracking, as I had mentioned, we can now make some predictions for Scream 5. So with the $69.2 million in its second week of release, the film will end somewhere between $115 and $138 million because it had a $24 million budget, $36 million total cost, meaning a $60 million break even. Because of this film being at $69 million, it means that the end result likely will be $33 to $47 million in net profit. Currently, it is sitting at $5.5 million in net gain profit. King's Daughter, as I said, because of the adjustment for inflation, and it's just not making any money, right now is $71 million in the red. 355 still well over $100 million in the red, making it one of the biggest financial flops of the year. Kingsman still at $86 million in the red, though it has performed much better than some had expected because it cost as much as it did and it made barely anything in its opening weekend. It is just not going to be able to make that money back. Sing 2 is looking at $17 million in net gain profit. Matrix Resurrections finally was able to actually, pass a threshold there. A lot of people were wondering, is it going to be a $200+ million loss? Well, no, but it'll still be north of $175 billion at the very least. And again, a lot of this help has been really given from the Chinese Communist Party. So, hey, kudos to you, Warner Brothers, for working with them. Spider-Man No Way Home, even though it's only at $1.6 billion in comparison to a number I thought it was going to be, still has made $714 million in net gain, net profit. The vast majority of that, of course, going to Sony, and about 25% of that going to Disney. West Side Story, still over $100 million in losses. And, of course, we have the other films mentioned here, $4.5 million in net gain profit for Ghostbusters Afterlife, still making a little bit of money, but again, this is probably going to be around the cap of what it's going to have had and made by the end of its run, but it is doing relatively well, it seems so far, on those pre-sales for the physical media collection. So what are y'all's thoughts about these numbers, though? Are you surprised to see what is going on right now with the fight between Scream and between Spider-Man No Way Home? One thing I did want to mention, since I do know that there are still some Scream mega hardcore fans that watch my channel and have been really mad every time I mention Scream, one thing just to keep in mind and to point out, that when you take these numbers and when you adjust these numbers for inflation, even though Scream 5 is looking pretty good in comparison to maybe a film like Scream 4, when you compare it to more successful films in the franchise like the first, second, and third films before fans just dropped off, because I assume the story just got very stale and the story just ended up being so repetitious that it just wasn't able to hold on to any of those extra people that were maybe fans of horror genre in general, or fans of the thriller slasher film in general, but not of the actual Scream version of that. That this film definitely seems to be going along the same pace in certain ways as Scream 4 from 2011. And so when you adjust for inflation, at the same time of its release, we have, of course, Scream 5. We don't have the numbers for the original Scream just because we didn't have those breakdowns back during that time in history. However, for Scream 2, it was at $109 million. So it had made twice as much. If you go to Scream 3, had made $96 million. Scream 4, $35 million. So even though it is outpacing the film that came out just before it, hopefully we can understand and see that these are definitely not anywhere close to the numbers that these other films in the franchise made. So we're looking at a movie that will probably end up somewhere close to where Scream 4 ended up. And the big reason why is because internationally, though Scream 4 did not do as well domestically, and again, Scream 5 is already beating it, doesn't look like that's going to be the same case for Scream 5's international versus Scream 4's international. And that could be, of course, blamed on a lot of different things. And I think we could see and expect a very similar end result if we go back again to the charting that I had done based off of the current week 2 numbers here. Scream 5 is going to have somewhere between 115 and 138 million, which would put that film just about on track to be maybe just over where Scream 4 was. So might be able to argue that it was more successful than Scream 4. Definitely not anywhere close to the former glory of its previous films, and I don't know exactly if this is going to make up for the cost that it was to gain the rights to this film that Paramount had to pay for the company that owned it. We'll, of course, have to wait and see what that is and how that plays out in the long run. But I did want to point this out since I know there were a lot of Scream fans, Scream fanatics that were very passionate about this film. Again, if you like the film, go right ahead. You can like whatever film that you want. But even when you compare this to other films in the franchise, again, not really holding up all that well in comparison. But what are y'all's thoughts about this and anything else I mentioned? Please let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, light up that fire button. If you're watching over on Odyssey, you guys are all amazing and beautiful people. I have, of course, to give a huge shout out to new Patreon members, Hymir, Ari, Hymason, and Jonathan. Thank you all for being new members on Patreon. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Please make sure you get your votes in for the Wednesday Raven Awards. Get those nominations in. Find the link on my website, ombReviews.com, and go over to the Raven Awards for 2021 to fill out your ballot today and nominate the best and worst of film in 2021. You're great. Have a wonderful day, everybody. And as always, God bless.
And now for a huge shout out to all of my January Patreon Subscribe Star and Locals members. Starting first off with Locals, shout out to Kara Tharp, UAB Mad Dog, Mike Jackson, Biffer DeHobbit, and Robert Barnes. Thank you all very much for supporting me over on the Locals platform. Also a shout out to my Subscribe Star people, UAB Mad Dog, Mike Jackson once again, Storm Tracker, The R, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, Stan 4, John B, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK Man. Thank you all very much for supporting me over on the Subscribe Star platform. And lastly, to my Patreon supporters, my 30 Patreon supporters over there, animation commentator Brandon, let's go Brandon, Brian P., Christopher Bowman, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Hannibal Grimm, Harold Francis, Inflamed Wood, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Gomer Kyle 79, Lance, Laura, the Modern Major General Story, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mondo Spieler, Mr. Peabody, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Rosetta Ellen, Stan Andrian, Miss Martin Muses, Theodore Benden, and Tina Bojan, and of course, Tina B, the Empress of the Universe. Thank you all so very much for your love and for your support. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and at the end of every video, please make sure that you support me over on a Patreon Subscribe Star or on Locals. Also, you get a ton of other goodies if you support at the Army of Asgard level and above. Starting at the Army of Asgard level, you get access to various giveaways that I do during the month, including various 4K titles. Many of them 4K Steelbook titles, and so if you want access to that, check out the Army of Asgard level on those platforms specifically. You also get access, once you are a Keeper the Bifrost level member, to that, plus a podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger, where you actually get to ask us questions, and also, of course, get access to that and the library of previous podcast episodes. We're up to about 33 episodes now that we have been able to do. I think most of those episodes now at this point we've actually done it together, which has been a lot of fun. And of course, you can join at the Chosen of Valhalla live stream, Chosen of Valhalla live stream level, where you get access to not only all of those things, but also you get access to be featured on the channel once a month during the Chosen of Valhalla live stream with the other Chosen members, which is always a lot of fun. Also, during your first month, you get a free t-shirt sent anywhere in the world. You just let me know your size. Let me know the t-shirt that you want from the store over on Teespring or on TeePublic, whichever you prefer, and I will gladly send that out to you if you're at that level. Anyway, you guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.